Okay guys, big update this time. We've officially entered escrow. Yay! So that is fantastic. Before we had a letter of intent, which is not uncommon, but it's also really not common. What we wanted to do is make sure that both us, the buyers, and the sellers would agree on something first before we just gave them an offer and we went back and forth. We thought it was way easier to do it this way. We had some assets that we needed to sell in order to make our part of it work, and they had a few things on their side they needed to do. So we now have taken care of all that, and we have signed papers from both us as well as the seller. So that is fantastic. We also have talked to the fire department and the city about a few things. We talked to them about the Barndominium concept, and unfortunately we have a little issue we have to sidestep there. I was hoping that we could build the building and then figure out the building inside and build that second, but it appears that the first building we put on the property needs to have a primary dwelling unit or the residential house. So we're gonna have to submit all of the plans together for both the major frame as well as the inside at the same time. So that's gonna kind of make us bump up our schedule a little sooner and try to get that designed and figured out. So we're gonna be working on that. The other thing that we've run into an issue with is the fire department has made some new demands that weren't there when our neighbors went down to the city and talked to them about a year ago building a house. They didn't have these requirements, and now for some reason they kind of changed their mind and they have some new firefighter requirements, which is, first they wanted us to have the road civilly engineered. It's a private road right now, about 800 feet, that extends from the end of a public road, and it's a private driveway. And that road itself is dirt. It's about 20 feet wide, but it's also been there since, I believe, the 40s or 50s. The fire department is now requiring us to pave that road. First, they were asking for it to be civilly engineered and designed, which would have just been hundreds of thousands of dollars. So luckily, they backed off the requirement of having it civilly engineered. They still want it paved, but they have agreed to let us wait till we're further down the line. We don't need to do it before we build, which is a major thing because then we can kind of wrap that into the construction loan. It still is kind of a hit. I personally wanted to eventually pave the road. I don't know that I wanted to do it when I built the house, but this is kind of pushing that forward. The second thing that's a major issue is they're asking for a fire hydrant. And since we're 800 or 900 feet away from city water, that's very expensive. At first, talking to LADWP, that would be somewhere around $400,000 to $500,000 if we extended the water main. And that's months of re-engineering and planning. We can't do that. We can't afford that. The next option that we talked about is possibly both me and the neighbor running 2 4-inch lines and combining them at the end for the fire hydrant, and doesn't really sound like that would really work as a benefit. And why we would need to do that is we need to get a certain flow rate. The fire chief that we talked to that was at the city wanted at least 800 gallons a minute at 20 psi. And unfortunately, you might be able to get that out of a 4-inch pipe, but LADWP throttles their water service, so you can't get that much flow out of it. The only way that you can get that much flow is out of a 6-inch line, which is a major, I think it's about $26,000 just for them to install the water meter, and then it's another $9,000 for them to install the vault where the water meter goes. Normally that's all included, so just to give you an example, a 3-inch water main is around $11,000 all included for the water meter, the vault, the installation in the street. And a 2-inch is about $6,500. So this is a major, we're into the 30,000s just for the water meter and the vault. And then as soon as you start talking about piping and backflow valves and everything that's required to connect to a 6-inch line, it's like 4 times the price as a 3 or a 2-inch system. So we're not really sure how we're going to handle that yet. We kind of broached the idea of talking to them about installing a water tank, like a 10,000 gallon tank, and plumbing it down to the fire hydrant. And they weren't opposed to that, but I wanted to go explore these other options first. I've gone over and I've talked to the actual fire stations, the fire chiefs there, and talked to them, because during the last fires that ran through here, that property that we just are entered escrow in burned. The whole thing burned, and it was kind of kind of honestly, it was nice for us because now the property's completely cleaned off. We can see everything. It was a lot of overgrown brush. It had been growing for many, many years. And one thing I want to say about that is none of the neighbors burned because they all had their minimum setbacks. They had clear brush around their houses, and there were a tremendous amount of firefighters that were there defending structures. And so that was fine. Everything worked out fine for everybody there. We plan on irrigating our property and trying to really maintain the way our property looks because we think it's going to be a benefit for the whole property to always be green and not brown. So we'll address that as we get closer. But for right now, the plan is to try irrigate. I know that's going to be somewhat expensive. We looked into wells, and we'll talk about all that later. But what's important is we're in escrow. That's super exciting. We still have to figure out the fire hydrant, and I'm sure we'll get past it. Right now it's just a small stumbling block. One of the other things we looked into is renaming the street. It ends the street name, and then there's only myself and I believe one other person that would be on the street name. We don't really like the street name that much, so we were looking at what it would take to rename it. So what we found in Los Angeles is that there is a street renaming committee. So you have to submit names to them and why you want to change it. You need the signatures of all the neighbors on board. It's a private street. I'm hoping it won't be that big of a deal. In the grand scheme of things, it's really, really small, but it would still be nice to name our street. How cool would that be? So another reason why we're trying to rename the street is that the street name now, already trying to spell it, it's got some N's and M's that are close together, and when you're trying to read it over the phone, just the few people I've talked to, it's already confusing. I'm just like, oh my god, am I signing up for a lifetime of trying to get my name misspelled or the name of the street misspelled wrong? So that's another reason why we want to rename it. Something else that we are doing, that a lot of people have been like, what are you doing, is we're selling a lot of our assets. So a lot of big things we have that are worth anything. For example, some of our costumes. We had some arcade games. We're just trying to sell all those, get as much cash as possible, for two reasons. One, we don't have to move it. And number two is we're bringing up our cash assets because it's going to take some of these things we have to solve outside of a construction loan. And so we want to make sure that we have the cash reserves in order to do that. Also, some of it is I needed some for the tractor as well as for the several attachments. And though I've purchased a tractor, I don't have all the attachments yet. All that I have coming with it is a bucket and a dozer blade. I still want a trencher and an auger. I think those are going to be the next two most important attachments. And hopefully I can find those locally. It seems like they come up on Craigslist every now and again, so I'm going to start looking for those. And now that I've sold some of my assets, I believe I can purchase those as soon as I find them. And then we have a couple more things that we're trying to sell to get our cash reserves up a little bit. I have also talked to some water pipe installers, and they've all told me that if I trench the hole, if I worry about that, their price almost goes down by half. So that's exciting because that's one of the reasons I got the tractor is I'm getting a trencher for it, and we're going to dig all of our own holes for water pipes, and we're going to grade and do whatever we need to our property, and that's why I thought it was important to buy the tractor. And once you guys see the property a little more and see what I'm doing with the tractor, you'll understand that because it's not just a flat piece of land, it's basically a hole with a small spot to build. And we still have to work on getting that where we want. But it's very pretty, and it's just going to take a little more work than most people want to do. And that's, I think, one of the opportunities for us that other people didn't see is that, yes, there is a lot of work to get this property into a usable state, but that's why nobody else bought it, and that left the opportunity for us. So we are super excited. Kind of a quick update, and that's all I've got. Till next week. Bye-bye. For the airplane to go away.